In this report, I must apologise to you sincerely. I made a profound judgment error recently, and as a serious journalist, I need to set the record straight. I did previously refer to the groundbreaking Tesla Cybertruck, some would say uncharitably, as the, quote, cyber urinal. And even more shamefully, perhaps more than once, the, quote, cyber trough. Retrospectively, all of this was a mistake, and although the vehicle does look to some, admittedly, as if its design may have been inspired in part by a 1950s men's lavatory in, perhaps, a major metropolitan British railway station, it was quite wrong of me to suggest this hundreds of times across 3 videos, triggering thousands of Tesla evangelists and resulting in my least popular video of 2023, currently orbiting 77.6% likes to dislikes. I spent many sleepless nights as a result of that, let me assure you. Obviously, as a YouTuber, being universally liked is essentially why I exist. So this was a terrible own goal apart from anything else. This was a gross and unacceptable error of judgment on my part, for which I apologise without reservation, especially in light of new information of which I have just been made aware. This amazing new Tesla off-roader, some would call it an all-new mode of transportation, if that wasn't already taken by the incredible Hyperloop. This amazing vehicle made of awe-inspiring rocket ship steel that has never before existed on Earth is clearly not a rolling men's convenience, and I should not have called it that. Any suggestion that it is was unequivocally wrong. Dude, I should have called this vehicle what it actually is, a cyber coffin, because it crashes like a piece of abject shit. I'm John Cadogan from AutoExpert.com.au. New cars cheap, but Australia only. Website, card. Now, if you actually know what you're looking at, this crash coming up of a Ford F-150, which the IIHS in America categorises as a top safety pick, is pretty good. That crash just screams, I walked away. But then there's this one. The cyber coffin crashing inelegantly there, obviously. Of course, if you were thinking only about boobies for the entirety of high school, or you are otherwise impaired intellectually, those two crashes do look much the same. Like, superficially, both cars just kind of go crash. But here's what you need to know, starting at the very, very beginning. Philip E. Mason is a British PhD chemist who, according to Wikipedia at least, works at the Institute of Organic Chemistry and Biochemistry at the Czech Academy of Sciences. So he's quite the serious brainiac, a dude who paid proper attention to many really boring lectures over several years. #respect. But why is he relevant? Why am I telling you about Mason-san? Dude, it's because he's also a YouTuber known as Thunderfoot. You've heard of him. He has amassed over 1 million subscribers. And he also runs the Voice of Thunder YouTube channel, which itself has 90,000-ish subs. So that's pretty serious YouTube success. Mr. Mason sticks his head well out above the trench in almost every video using those pesky facts to take aim at, and usually to debunk pretty effectively as preposterous nonsense, aspects of religion, pseudoscience, creationism, etc. We could be here all day. I note Elizabeth Holmes has been something of a Thunderfoot favourite. Go figure. But of course, he has one other darling. The genius who knows, according to him, more about manufacturing than anyone currently alive on Earth. I could only be talking about Thanos X. Mr. Mason has dozens of videos chronicling Space Karen's various bullshit statements and positions, including one of the latest, which was most entertaining, in which Electric Cheeses' lawyers have seemingly argued that a person as important to the universe as Thanos X should not be deposed by the plaintiff's team in an autopilot wrongful death lawsuit. The cheese is not fit as a person to depose, they claim, because he is a very, very famous person, and therefore any statements he makes online are likely to be an AI-generated deep fake, obviously. And I do so look forward to this being accepted as a universal legal principle in the near future, a future where famous and or rich people can get away with saying anything because technology can only be an upgrade, right? This is despite, in this particular case, which is the glacé cherry on the icing of its cake, the particular statements of concern seemingly being made in front of hundreds of actual people who exist in person, whom some would refer to as, I don't know, eyewitnesses at a live audience and uploaded for posterity on YouTube. I think they suggested this preposterous deposition countermeasure bullshit, as lawyers often do, with a completely straight face. Hashtag Golden Age of Bullshit 2024. Anyway, Voice of Thunder is quite an uplifting resource, is what I'm saying, and on it, a couple of weeks ago, Mr. Mason did some quite heavy lifting on a Cybertruck crash test using official Tesla crash test footage and NCAP's Ford F-150 crash performance from their official video archive. I'll put a link in the description for the full video on Voice of Thunder, but the salient bit is this.
First of all, this is your head in a Cybertruck. And now let's do the overlay with the F-150, with everything synced up.
Okay, so the dots represent the mass centroids of the driver's dummies' heads in each crash. That little target thingo that you always see on the side of their heads. It allows the crash lab types to measure rates of this and that, going frame by frame afterwards, reviewing the footage, blah, blah, blah. The speeds are the same and the crash pathways are superimposed, okay? This was done by Science PhD Thunderfoot Mason, and it seems like a pretty solid execution to me, subject to having quite limited data to work from, based on available information. In other words, it's a 35 mile per hour crash test, according to Mr. Mason, and the speed is certainly verified on the side of the F-150 in the case of that crash. Let's take another look now, and I want you to concentrate on those dots, red dot versus blue dot, okay? Red for the Mars cyber coffin, and blue for Earth, obviously, and also the F-150. Here's the F-150. And here is the cyber coffin. And here's what happens when Thunder Mason overlays them one atop the other, syncing the scale and the start points. And there you go, dude, game over. That thing is a cyber coffin. At least that's what the images strongly suggest to me. The top image here is a screenshot of the start of the crash overlaid with both vehicles on it. The dots are overlapped, which is why you can only see one. This screenshot is taken as close as I could get to the moment that each vehicle starts to interact with the barrier. So the crash is only incipient at that point. The bottom image is the extent of the forward movement of the driver dummy's head in each case. The dummies are precision instruments, of course, and obviously thousands of data points are generated during these crash tests. More data is derived later, rates of change, peak accelerations, etc. We don't have access to any of that information. But the one overarching conclusion that just jumps off the screen and down my throat is this. The dummy's head moves significantly further in the F-150, doesn't it? It takes much more space to stop the dummy's head in the Ford crash. Is that good or bad? Commit to an option now, dude. I double dead dingo's donger. Dare ya. Is it good or bad? Write it the fuck down. Have an opinion for once. Is the Cybertruck just stronger because of its magic Martian steel? And does it therefore protect the driver's head like King Arthur's solid suit of armour, only better? Does it keep the cranium of the faithful further away from the crash, where it's better protected and safer, because Space Thanos is a genius who knows more about collision safety than anyone currently alive on Earth? Just like manufacturing, really. Whereas, is the Ford simply another flimsy piece of shit, folding up like a piano accordion being sat upon by a fat woman? Because the legacy auto industry hasn't a snowball's chance on a size 22 buttock of performing like a revolutionary chariot from Thanos X Industries. Is that really how this works in your mind? Well, dude, I asked Isaac Newton to adjudicate on this because this is not really one of those opinion deals. It's a fact thing. And the cool thing about interviewing Isaac Newton is that no appointment is ever necessary. He's always available, 24/7, 365. It's amazing. You don't even need resurrection, a Ouija board, or a seance. You just need to be conscious at school, dude. They tell you what Newton says about situations such as this for free. All you have to do is listen. Imagine that. Newton says drivers' heads start with equal kinetic energy in each test. And kinetic energy is, of course, half of mass times velocity squared. Same mass, same velocity. It's a standardized test. Therefore, same kinetic energy. Drivers' heads finish with equal kinetic energy too, don't they? Because there is a point in time just before rebound kicks off where the velocity of the driver's head is zero relative to, nearby space-time. Zero velocity equals zero kinetic energy, obviously. The heads come to rest at the same time, more or less, but the F-150 driver's head manages to travel a lot further. And the change in kinetic energy is the same. So what can we do with this information? Change actually means over time, right? That's pretty clear. Like, look at a photograph of you as a kid at school and then stand in front of the mirror. Things change over time, in the time domain. That is what over time means, right? Change means over time. Delta T in the physics universe. Newton would say that the driver's heads start with a fixed packet of joules of energy. And the crash does a thing called work on those heads. And that's kind of important because work is also measured in joules. And the salient thing about work is that it begets a change in energy. In this case, it's a reduction in energy because the work is being done against the motion of the heads. Work is mass times acceleration times distance. And then Newton chimed in because he also asked me not to forget that force equals mass times acceleration. You've heard of that. F equals ma, which is kind of the crux of Newton's second law of motion. So it's named after him. I'm tipping he'd know. We can therefore replace mass times acceleration with force, okay? So work equals force times distance. And we've got a fixed amount of work, which would be the energy of the driver's heads, fixed at the start of the crash, and it reduces to zero when the scenery stops in the instant prior to rebound. That's the fixed amount of work that gets done in this little project. The two variables are therefore force and distance, aren't they? And this means that if you reduce the distance by making the structure stiffer, using perhaps Thanos X's amazing stainless space steel, the force, like the inertial load on the driver's head, is gonna increase. And that's quite bad because your brain is in a box made of bone, and there is a limit to the load that anyone's brain can tolerate. After that, nothing good ever happens, dude. If you increase the distance, like in the F-150 crash, for example, the load gets reduced. More distance equals less force, less load. Therefore, you are more likely to survive. That's how this works. If you can't conceptualize that, however, because physics and maybe your other brain cell is a bit too busy with reruns of Girls Gone Wild, look at it like this. This crash in a cyber coffin is like falling off a ladder onto a concrete floor in relative terms. Your brain will stop in a relatively short distance once the crash with the floor starts, okay? The load it endures will therefore be relatively high. Alternatively, you might fall off the same ladder onto a floor made entirely of, silicon breast implants 8 feet deep or something. This happens quite a lot in my dreams, in fact all the time, almost every night. Only the implants in my dreams have already been implanted into the cheerleaders' mummies. But we're not talking about that today, obviously. The point is, if you fall overboard one evening into the sea of as yet unimplanted fun bag upgrades, you're going to stop over a much longer distance, so the inertial loads on you will be less, and this is unequivocally good. Stopping over a longer distance is more like winning first prize, even if the implants are yet to be allocated. Therefore, and this is going to be something of a bitter red pill to swallow for the Tesla fanboy living happily in Elon's matrix, if you are going to snot a wall head on at 35 miles per hour, you'd really rather be doing it in an F-150, provided the concept of, there being a personal afterwards is in any way attractive to you. Alternatively, I suppose, you might decide instead just to take the blue pill and wake up tomorrow morning still dreaming of being buried in a Thanos X Industries Foundation series, bullet-stopping, magic space giga coffin.